Welcome to Everything's Fucked podcast, where you haven't been fucked till you've heard everything's fucked. You're here with Monica,
And Asia.
and today we're going to be talking about our parents and trauma and generational toxic issues.
Fun times here.
We're
Everything's
going to get
fucked.
it real deep.
I like the way you introed that.
Oh, this
Uh,
one's going to be more than we can handle.
yeah, it's going to be a little bit more of a heavier episode. I mean, for us, we typically like to keep it funny, but I think sometimes, we got to be real and take on some more serious topics. This would be kind of a more serious one, I think.
I think so too. I mean, we could still laugh, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're not
I'm just going to start laughing just randomly.
just to fucking throw me off.
Yeah, you're going to be real serious. All of a sudden, I just start laughing.
Well, I can never be
Wrong
that
place,
serious,
Monica.
but, we'll try to keep it lighthearted.
Yeah.
All right, so where did you want to start?
No, where do you want to start? Just kidding. No, I was gonna
I
say
look at the board. I'm like, how about here? I just pick a random spot.
you're just like throwing a dart. No, not at the computer screen, but it have to be one of those sticky Nerf ones.
I love it.
No, I was gonna say I think some people their biggest fear is being like their parents.
Yes.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think it was one of
When you hear
mine.
like, "Oh, you're just like your mom," or "You're just like your dad," and that cuts real deep for some people.
It did for
And
a lot of
honestly, I think
years.
if somebody said that to me, I'd be really mad.
Monica's truly offended by that comment.
Yeah, I'm like, "Excuse me, you can fuck off."
Honestly, I feel like for so many years I didn't want to be anything like my mom, and she was just she was a toxic mom, so I modeled my entire mothering off of what not to do. Like, don't do it her way, do it this anything but that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now that she's a good person, and she's trying and she's changed herself, it's a little different. When people say you sound like your mom or you look like your mom, then I feel like I take it as a compliment now. You know what I mean? But back in
Yeah.
the day, man, that did cut real
She's
deep.
really redeemed herself
Yes.
though, and like really turned her life around, is doing a lot of things that are very different than she
Yes.
used to do. But I think if you like sat down and thought about it, you wouldn't want to parent the way she parented
Never.
you,
No.
but maybe the way she's like is with your
Her
her grandkids,
grandkids,
your
yeah.
kids
Mhm.
would maybe be different, right?
Yeah.
So,
No,
and that's the thing too, is parents are different. Usually, I don't say this for every parent because it's not the case with my parents. Are sometimes different with their grandkids and the way they parent grandkids and the way they parent their own children
well, I
too.
think I think my
Which grandkids you parent them.
I think my mom's parenting style, even with her change in behavior, her parenting style hasn't changed. So I think that my
Okay.
mom is very lax with her grandkids. She's the kind of person that
Okay.
just lets them do whatever they want because they're her grandbabies to a certain point. Um,
Right.
but no, I mean, I still when I take my kids and drop them off, my mom will like take them out places I would generally not do and do things I generally wouldn't do. Let them stay up later. Like she's like the fun grandma. So no,
Got it.
yeah,
Okay.
I think
Yeah. I
I
think
go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I think I
You
parent.
already started.
I think I parent completely different than my mom. So I always
Okay.
have.
Yeah, I would say same for me. And I think that's too because one thing that I did promise myself when I had Ramona is that I wouldn't parent anything like my parents did
Yeah.
because I didn't like the way that they parented. And I feel like I didn't take it to an extreme place. I didn't say I'm going to go the complete opposite of the way that my parents parented, but I did take a lot of things that they did and say, like, I know this didn't work because I see what it did for me. I see what it did for my siblings. And that isn't anything like the way that I would want to parent my child. I can't say that there are many things that my parents did that I currently do the same.
Yeah.
Like I tried to think of some things, is there anything they did or the like styles of parenting that they had or ways they parented us that I currently do with Ramona, and I honestly couldn't really think of anything that was the same. Do you think you have any things that you do that are the same as the way your parents parented or
I think the only thing that's the same is like the cool mom vibe that I give off. My mom gave off the same vibe. Um, I think I no, I think honestly I cuss a lot like my mom did, things like that, but I can't
I
think.
think openness maybe, like, my
Yeah.
parents were kind of, like would make jokes and stuff about, like, different things, like taboo topics,
Yeah.
and I think I maybe am like that in that kind of sense, whereas,
Yeah.
like, Reed didn't grow up that way, and so
Yeah.
maybe that's different. I think too, generationally, all like, you adapt to what's going on because obviously there's a lot of technology now, so that kinda changes the way that you parent anyway,
Yeah.
but I think the generational trauma and dysfunction and toxic family cycles are what is the most important for how I didn't want to parent Ramona. Like
Yeah.
breaking those things and breaking, down those boundaries and making sure that I wasn't bringing in, you know, trauma cycles from my childhood and from my parents' childhood and pulling that back into the way that I'm parenting because I really do feel like some people have a really hard time breaking away from those things because that's all they know. And it's really easy to just fall into the patterns of, this is how my parents were. This is how my grandparents parented my parents. And this is how I'm going to parent my kids. And I do think that sometimes if you're not aware of it being a trauma or a dysfunction or a toxic cycle, it's easy to just fall into those patterns and behaviors and just parent your own kids that way.
Well, with Rebecca,
So,
I know I did. Like when I had Rebecca, I moved out. I think she was like a year old when we moved out or somewhere around there. And I got my own apartment and stuff. And I was neglectful to her. The same way that my mom was to us. Like I didn't think it was necessary to go do laundry all the time. I didn't think it was necessary to have her on a set schedule. She woke up when I woke up. She went to bed when I went to bed. I just didn't I wasn't parenting her. I was more like just living with her, making sure she survived, you know what I mean? And she stayed alive and loving on her and stuff, of course. But like, I just wasn't really talking to her, parenting her. If I was parenting her, it was the wrong type of discipline, like my mom would do, where I'm reacting and I'm spanking her. Um, I just wasn't doing it right until I think she was about 4.5 years old when I got into all the programs I went through. And then I went to parenting, and when I got to parenting and stuff, I learned that I was wrong. Like all that time, she was missing milestones. I was missing that she was missing those. And I was parenting her completely wrong. I'm sure, reminiscent to like a neglectful mother, which is what I would consider my mom. So it was really hard for
okay,
me to realize I was doing that. And I made a commitment when I was pregnant with Liliana that I wasn't going to continue that cycle and I was going
gonna
to
parent
break
that
it.
way.
Yeah, and so I stayed in parenting and Junior went with me even though I was court ordered. Junior went with me every week, and it was like 52 classes and stuff, and I learned a lot and I grew from that, and I realized how much I was parenting like my mom. So I really try to go the
Okay.
opposite direction now. I don't if it feels anything like her, unless it's the positive parts, then I don't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I definitely do. And I think that's really important because you're recognizing like it wasn't an okay situation and you're trying to change it for yourself, but more for your kids because you don't want your kids to experience things that you went through. And one thing I try to do for Ramona and for myself is like really try to watch my language around Ramona. And I'm not saying like, fuck shit or whatever, because I definitely don't do that.
No,
I'm
no.
talking about the way that I speak to Ramona, like not speaking
Yes.
down to her or putting her down or making her feel, you know, that not good about herself or that she is inferior in any way because I really feel that I was spoken to that way a lot when I was a kid and from all of my parent groups. And
Yeah.
to me, I often wonder if, my parents were spoken to in that way. And my dad grew up in foster care, and my stepmom, she didn't. She had her family, but the way I know her parents, and I don't know how she grew up. I really don't. And you know, I wonder if maybe she grew up that way. I don't know. And I know how my mother grew up, and I do think she was spoken to that way when she was younger. And so,
Yeah.
if they are grown, like they grow up in a relationship with their parents where people are speaking down to them regularly, they might feel like that's okay to speak down to their children that way. But
Yeah.
I don't want my daughter to ever feel like she isn't good enough or smart enough or pretty enough or strong enough or whatever, because that's not an okay way for a child to grow up feeling about themselves. And when I became an adult, that was one of the things that it took me a lot of years to find myself,
Yeah.
and I don't want my daughter to find herself
That
for
late.
15 years or 20
Yeah.
years or whatever because somebody was constantly telling her that she was something else.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I've really tried so hard to parent so differently from my parents. And I think that is a toxic family cycle or a generational dysfunction that I've
Yeah.
I've really struggled with and tried so hard to be different with. And I'm not perfect.
No, and
It's
everyone makes
hard.
mistakes. Everyone makes
Yeah.
mistakes, you know what I mean? But I
Especially when you grow up in a situation where that's the only language that you know. Like if
yeah.
you've grown up your whole life that way, it's hard to change the way that you are talking to other people because that's also how you talk to yourself. And as we've mentioned in other episodes, like if you're talking to yourself a certain way, it's hard to talk to other people in a different language
It
because
is.
that's the only way that you're talking to yourself. So
Yeah.
you have to learn how to talk to yourself differently too.
My mom, I think she was just completely opposite than your parents. My mom built us up, told us how great we were. I feel like she was just very complimentary all the time, if I remember,
Yeah.
like always telling us how great we were and how hard we were working and how this and that. And she built us up. But my mom modeled behavior. She modeled
Like negative behavior.
negative
Okay.
fighting with her spouses or her significant others. And she would,
Mhm.
you stupid piece of shit motherfucker. And she'd go into them every single time and she'd hit them and in front of everybody. And that was very hard as a child because then I grew up and got married and I was doing it to my husband. I was, you're stupid piece of shit. And I'd go right in on him like my mom would do and I'd hit him. And it took me, I would say, years to break that cycle and to get myself under control when we're fighting and to have him understand a clean fight helps me stay within the boundaries. And
Yeah.
my mom definitely modeled some very negative behavior with that. And I try so hard to break the cycle so my son and my daughters don't see it and or repeat it
I was gonna
because
say, because then you're teaching them,
mhm,
yeah,
yeah. And
different ways to cope and
it's hard. It's very hard. I mean, honestly, my mom, I think the biggest thing I take away from my mom's parenting style is she was a great mom and she was there for us and we could always go to her and I trusted her and yeah, she was a good provider, like all those things. But she modeled so many negative behaviors to us, like it was so normal to be the way she was being that we all came out with this like understanding of, oh, it's okay. I'm an adult. Like I'm allowed to act this way because, I'm an adult and you pissed me
yeah,
off and you made me upset or you did X, Y, and Z. And so I'm allowed to react like this. And my
yeah,
mom definitely just modeled so much of that I have a hard time, especially if I'm high, when I was taking pills and stuff, I had a really hard time controlling myself when Junior would not fight fair. And so that's a hard one to break for me and I really want to get it under control so that like I said my other kids don't have to take it.
yeah, and I think just being aware of that and
Mhm.
knowing that it's a problem is, like we always say, like one of the first steps of trying to change it and be different. And I think that's good that you're aware of it and you are working on it because it's one of those things where, the more you work on it and try to change it for yourself, the more aware you are of it and the better it's going to be for your kids because they're going to see that change and that difference.
Yeah.
Maybe they grew up with it when they were younger, but as they're getting older, they're noticing that there's a change and there's a difference. And, for those things too, like as your kids get older, you can say things to them like,
Yeah, I have.
"I reacted this
I
way and
have.
it was not appropriate,"
Yeah.
and it's okay.
We've
Yeah,
had
like
tough
you're saying, you have.
we've had tough conversations after big blow ups. I think me and Junior have had big arguments like once every 4 to 7 years in our marriage, and we've been together almost 20 years. So it's happened. Um, the hitting and stuff, I have had it under control for quite some time. But every now and again, he'll do whatever it is, and I can't even think of it right now, but whatever it is, sucking his teeth, rolling his eyes, whatever, and it does trigger me, and I have to leave the house or I'm going to do something stupid because it is something that I'm still working on. And I think my kids see me working on it. They can see that I'm really trying to change the way I react to people. And so I'm just trying to model that more than anything that, yeah, I make mistakes. And yeah, every once in a while I slip back into my old behavior, but I really am trying to have, you know, not even just for my kids, it's for my marriage too, because I want my
Yeah.
husband to feel respected and like not scared of me and not like I'm going to call him names or I'm going to hit him because he is a dick. You know what I mean? Like I don't think many women talk about this, but it is something that a lot of women do, and I know I'm guilty of it. And my mom is the one who made it okay. She was with like 4 or 5 different men and reacted to each one of them. Besides my dad, she never hit. He hit her, so that's what
Mm.
started the whole cycle for her. He abused her for 13 years, and she got out, and so now she's the abuser.
Yeah.
And so
Probably as a way of protecting herself.
yeah, and so it wasn't anybody's fault how it all happened, but I'm definitely trying to break the cycle. And
That's
so
good.
you know what I mean? It's one of those
Yeah.
things as a mom, you don't really think about what you're doing to your kids until they're like a little older and you start to see the effect you've had on their personality.
Yeah. It was really interesting you said, you always felt like you could trust your mom and, like, talk to her about things, and I never really felt like that with my parents, so I never felt comfortable having any kind of open communication with them. I would never feel comfortable talking to them about anything. If I had a problem, the last people I would ever go to would be my parents, like,
Wow.
ever. I would never have called my parents if I was in trouble, if I had a problem, nothing. I wouldn't do that, and so that's another thing too that I am trying to do differently with Ramona. I want her to feel like no matter what she does in her life or what is going on or what has happened, I mean, if she does something, the worst thing she could think of, that she always knows that she can call me, that she can tell me anything, she could talk to me about anything, because I never felt that with my parents. I would have never trusted them with anything. And I feel like anytime I ever did maybe open up to any of them about something, that it was somehow twisted or used against me in some kind of way, that made me feel uncomfortable, or, that was negative.
Yeah.
If I ever did try to open up to like my mom about something, because my mom and I have always had like a weird kind of relationship where it's almost been like a friendship type of, not really a mom daughter relationship,
Yeah.
more of a friend kind of awkward borderline mom daughter relationship. I don't know how to describe it. It's but
I
anyways, anytime I've ever tried to, you know what I'm kind of saying?
yeah, I know. I think daughters
Yeah.
and mothers all can relate to what you just said.
Well, I think there's multiple reasons that our relationship has been like that. For one, she was 16 when she had me, and I didn't grow up with her. I grew up with my dad, and I only lived with my mom for very short periods of time in my life. 1 year when I was in 5th grade, 1 year when I was in high school, and then I only saw her in the summers, and that was it. And so we never really developed any kind of deep connection with each other. And then we never really we've had long periods of time where we don't talk to each other, and then we go for a couple of years where we do, and it's always been a weird strained relationship, and I never have felt comfortable around her, and we never really like developed like a strong mother-daughter bond.
Yeah.
And so it's always been this weird relationship to me where I've kind of described it as like an aunt relationship.
Yes.
That's what it feels like to me.
Okay.
Like she's an aunt who's a friend.
That's a really good description because I have aunts, so I know exactly what you mean. Okay.
Yeah, and
That
that's
would
what
be
it feels
weird
like
since
to
she's your
me.
mom.
Yes, who tries to sometimes mother me, and then sometimes I'll tell her things, and I feel like it's sometimes used against me or it's gossiped with other people,
Yes.
and that makes me feel uncomfortable, like, I'm telling you this in confidence, and now I'm feeling judged by it.
Yeah.
And, to me, I don't feel that that should be done, and it makes me not trust talking to her about things. And I don't want that for Ramona. I want her to feel she can talk to me, that she doesn't have to hide things from me no matter what age she is. And while, I've always said, and we've had an episode about this, that parents shouldn't be friends with their kids.
Yeah.
I want her to feel like she can tell me anything, you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
And there's still going to be boundaries there, of course,
Yes.
but I'm here for her no matter what.
Yeah. I think that I proved that to Rebecca when Rebecca went through all of her stuff and her acting out. Um, because when she went to jail, I went every Saturday and visited. I took every single phone call. I put money every single time. I was just there. I flew all the way to Michigan every 3 months to see her when she got placed. Like, I went to court for every single time we were in court. So I feel like I did that for her. But the other kids, it's like you don't have as many opportunities to prove to them that you would do anything if they
Yeah,
fucked up. You know what I mean? And
because they're not fucking up.
exactly. So Rebecca was a good gauge for my kids to see my undying love for all of them. Because when I had her
Yeah.
back in the house in January, they were like, okay, mom isn't messing around and we could do anything and she would still be our mom. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think that that's important because my mom did make me feel that way too. She never made me feel, my mom was a very good mom. And I think that, like I said, it's just the way she modeled behavior and the men that she chose to bring into the house and the drugs that she did, you know what I mean, made her who she
Yeah.
was. You know what I'm saying? But
Yes. Oh, definitely.
when I parent my kids, there's a few rules I have. You don't get loaded with them in any capacity. Like, you just don't. I don't care if it's pot, nothing. My mom
Yeah.
did that with me and she broke that rule all the time. I don't talk about sex with my kids, that I'm having or anything to do with that. And I
Right.
keep it away from
Yes.
my children because my mom was super open and just told everybody her life.
Yeah, it's one thing to have a conversation about sex and about being sex positive and about, like sex in general, but you don't bring it into like what you're doing in the bedroom.
Your sex life. Yeah, you
Yeah.
keep your sex life private.
Part
You
of
tell
it.
your girlfriends that shit if you need to get it out.
Yeah.
You don't tell your kids. And my mom, I was her
No
girl.
matter what age they are.
Doesn't matter. No, I don't. Honestly, I don't think anybody wants to hear about their parents having sex. And so my
No.
mom talking about it, doing it loudly in the house in the middle of the day, things like that just made it very like toxic. And I felt like right then and there, at 15, 16 years old, I'm not doing this shit to my kids. You know what I mean? And it was just
Yeah.
one of those stamps where you're like, nope, that one too. Nope, see, that's
Moving
terrible.
on.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so with my kids, I'm just a lot like my mom, but without all of the trauma and without all the bad modeling of behavior. Well, can't say all the time, but I try.
Yeah, I mean, you've made some mistakes,
Yeah.
but you've owned them and your kids know that you've owned them and you're doing better. So,
Yeah.
and that's what's
Try. I'm
important.
trying, man. No.
So, do you have any like parental figures or influential people in your life that like have influenced your parenting, or people who have impacted your parenting that are like parent type figures? Or did you just have your parents?
Honestly, the only people that I went around when we were being raised, I would say would be my cousins, but it was like annually. We didn't really see people very often, and the only people that have really shaped my parenting style besides my parents would be the people at the parenting classes, like all the people that were
Okay.
there, the ones that were supporting me because it was like a group. So it was
Yeah.
like we were all there for a year. We all fucked up around the same time and got to court at the same time and we're all here at the same time. And they really uplifted me and made me feel like seen and made me feel like what I was going through wasn't abnormal. And then
Okay.
you have helped me a lot too because our daughters both have ADHD. And I think that I have to do a lot of hindsight parenting with Rebecca because I didn't do a lot when I had her. So
Yeah.
when you tell me your experiences, it validates mine because a lot of the things I was going through, I was screaming from the mountaintops, I'm struggling. Please help me. This is really
Yeah.
hard. And everyone's like, she's not that difficult. She's not that hard. You're making this hard. And
Yeah.
now knowing that it is hard and like it's just very validating for me. So though you and people like you in my life have helped me with my parenting because
That's
Parenting
good.
Rebecca was really hard. Parenting my other kids, piece of fucking cake in comparison to Rebecca.
Yeah,
Like night and
I've heard
day
that.
difference. Like they get up and get themselves ready for school and leave and don't wake me up, Monica. Starting in the fifth
Nope,
grade.
could not
In
even
the
imagine
fifth
that.
grade. They're high functioning
I hear
children.
people say that, and I'm like, "What?"
Rebecca never got up on her own, never took her meds on her own, never
Nope.
left the house on time. I was constantly bickering. And see, you're talking about how you try to talk to Ramona a certain way so that you don't put her down. I did not do that with Rebecca. I told her what a piece of shit she was every fucking chance I got because I was so mad at her for being a piece of shit. I was just like, knock it off. You know what I mean? And that's really I didn't learn until she was like 11, 12, 13 that I was doing it wrong. And I still was so stuck in the habit of comparing her to Lily, comparing her to everybody else when she was not neurotypical, had issues. And I just kept comparing her. And now I realize what I've done. It's too late.
Yeah,
You know what I
it's
mean?
yeah.
To go
I
back
mean,
and
it wasn't
repair
too
it.
late, but it's really hard to unparent something that you've already done.
Yeah. So
It is really hard.
it is. So I'm learning. I learned and I'm with my other kids, I definitely do everything, different than I did with Rebecca because I realized, and my son Joshua kind of shows a little bit of ADHD tendencies. He has
Mhm.
issues along the lines of like keeping a list, going. He has to write it down. Like you can't tell him four things to get out of the other room. Different things like that. And I see a little like sliver of it, and every once in a while I'll go to compare him to Rebecca, or I'll go, and I'll
Can't do that.
no,
Yeah.
and it's just I've had to learn not to bring her back into it and be like, now you're acting like your sister. You know what I mean? Because that's making
Yeah.
her negative again, even though she's not even
Yes.
here to
Even
defend
though she's
herself.
not even here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm learning a lot. I've learned a lot, especially since we started the podcast, because it makes me
Yeah.
reflect a lot more on my own behavior and on what we're talking about, especially when I hear it back. Like we're having this conversation, me and you right now. But when I go and hear it back, like everybody else, I learn so much more. And then I hold myself accountable more because um, we are human. We have these, habits that are set in our brain that we've been doing for a really long time. And it's hard to catch yourself and be like, fuck, I did
Yeah.
it again, and really stop when you're doing it. So,
Exactly. No, I totally understand that. I really feel like my grandparents were hugely like my nana who passed
oh,
away and my
yeah.
papa were really influential cuz they were around when I was younger. I mean, I didn't see them as much when I was younger, bits and pieces here and there. We did live with them for a while, one of my sisters and I. And then I think after I had Ramona is when they were really impactful. And honestly, I think they were the best parents that I could have had while
Yeah.
I was raising Ramona when she was little. And I think my grandmother really taught me like a lot of patience with Ramona, and she was very patient with Ramona even when she wasn't patient with her, she was.
Yeah.
And she really helped me a lot when Ramona was small. And I think having a different like way of thinking of what like a mother should be like
Yeah.
because I don't feel like I had a good influence, growing up on what a mom should really be like,
Yeah.
really helped me learn. And then now Reed's mom is also
Yeah.
like really hugely influential to me because she's just so like loving and always, whatever you need, let me check in with you, and always wants to know what's going on in the family. And, I think Reed sometimes finds that a little smothering, but I don't because I never had that. I don't
Yeah.
have somebody
Reaching out.
who, yeah, like honestly is reaching out and not just like
Yeah.
ticking a box.
Exactly.
Like, she really wants to know what's going on. And, to me, it's one of those things where it makes me feel really special, and I love that. And I love the way she loves her kids. She loves all 3 of her kids so much, Reed's mother. And, yeah, she's a little overwhelming sometimes, but she doesn't judge them,
Yeah.
and she just loves them, and she just wants the best for them, and she's just so happy when they come to see her, and she just can't get over that they're all here. Everyone's here for Christmas. We're all here together, and she's just so overwhelmed by that. And that is not the way that my family is. And so when I see that, I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, like this is what like I
I'm
wish I had
missing.
had growing up."
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is what I want Ramona to feel when she comes home for Christmas. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
that's the kind of stuff that I look for.
Yeah.
And to me, like, Reed's mother is very much like has taken over that role for me. And I love that so much, like having that. She's such a good grandmother to Ramona, too. So, it's been really important to have that because I don't have my grandmother anymore.
Yeah.
And so having that mom figure and seeing that what that looks like is really it's upsetting sometimes because 'cause I'm like, why didn't I have that?"
Yeah.
You
You
know?
know,
Like, why?
I think my whole childhood, knew I knew it wasn't normal, and I knew it was sucking, and I
Yeah.
knew that it was gonna get better when I got older. Like, I was definitely one of those kids that was like, "Asia, when you're an adult, baby Asia's not gonna she's gonna be a thing of the past. You're gonna be
Yeah.
living your life, you're gonna be happy, you're gonna have your kids, you're gonna get married." Like, I would tell myself as a 9-year-old kid getting molested, "Once you survive this, Asia, you're fucking good." You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
life has always been so fucking hard that I think now that I'm getting older, I look back on my childhood and I really do feel sorry for myself sometimes. I get the why me's because it's like, wow, like I hit every branch on that fucking tree on the way down to the ground. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
checked every box. Like, you guys made sure to do everything you could to try to smother my spirit and make me a failure, basically, because of all the trauma. And so I do feel sorry for myself, but then I have to remind myself that I survived it and I'm here and I do have the life I wanted and I am happy and I am blessed. You know what I mean? So I think when you have a really rough childhood, it makes your parenting style so much different because you want your kids never to experience what you experienced, even on
Yeah.
any small
Or you
level.
go the other way and you're like maybe not doing as well, but I think a lot of people do really wanna change, like, that experience for their kids, and they really wanna, like, show them something different and do something different for
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
which I feel, that's a great thing about today is like there's so many tools and things
Yes.
you can do differently. And we're always going on about therapy, but there's so many ways to learn how to get yourself out of these toxic cycles and get yourself away from the generational trauma and get yourself away from this dysfunction and stuff like that, and learning boundaries and learning how to say no and learning how to move away from that kind of stuff to parent your kids differently and to love on them differently and to teach them different coping mechanisms and stuff like that is so important because you don't have to struggle that way. And I think it's part of a healing process too
I
when you're
agree.
able to parent your kids differently and to show them a different kind of love than maybe you didn't have. I think it's really healing,
Yeah.
and I think loving on Ramona in a way that I didn't feel like I got as a kid does make me feel good, and it
Yeah.
does make me feel like I am healing and dealing with it. And
I
yeah, I
agree.
do get the what'd you call it? The why me's?
Yeah. That's what we call them, the why me's. Like,
Yeah.
you get stuck in the
I do get
box.
that sometimes, yeah, and,
Yeah.
I don't like to be in that
Me
mindset,
neither.
how I
I
like to try to put a positive spin on things,
I
and
I typically I'm big on feeling my feels. So like the other day, one of my followers, I was talking about my situation and they reached out and they were asking me a little bit more in depth about how I had Becca and how that all happened. And then they messaged me how they felt sorry for me. And I said, no,
whoa.
don't feel sorry for me. It's okay. Like,
Yeah.
it's not okay that it happened. It's not okay how everything took place, but don't really feel sorry for me. Instead, see the growth, see, like, I don't know. To me, I just want people to understand that, like, most people have
You're more
trauma.
sharing a message, not
Yeah.
trying to, like, get sympathy.
Yes. And so I think people read it wrong, or they think maybe that you're trying to fish for like sympathy. But for me, I just
Yeah.
want everyone to know that trauma is normal. A lot of people have it. A lot of people's parents, especially in the 70s, 80s, they Back in the day, they did it different. You know what I mean? And
Yeah. You stuff your trauma down, you don't talk about it, you
yeah.
don't heal from it, you don't cope with it,
Yep.
you move along, you
Yes.
suck it up.
Yeah, and then you take it out on everybody else without meaning
Yep.
to. And so we're growing
And you
from that.
traumatize them.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's just I want everyone to know, like, if you're still fighting the battle like me of trying to break those habits and trying to like change the cycle, break the cycle like I am. I mean, I'm a work in progress every fucking day because there's so many layers to my onion of trauma that it's like I have so many different things I have to work on. It's not really fair, but I do have a lot of things I juggle and it's okay. You know what I mean? If you're making mistakes, as
Yeah.
long as you're able to say, I made a mistake. Um, does it bother you when people say you sound like your mom, or has anybody ever said that to you?
My mom and I look alike.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
wow.
look very so it's really interesting because my m- is somebody knocking?
No.
Oh, that was weird.
Oh, my water bottle moved. Sorry.
Oh, I was like, "Do you need to get the door?" Um, so my mom and my dad, my
Mhm.
bio dad, had 2 kids together.
Yeah.
So, it's super weird because that sister looks just like my dad, and I look just like my
Oh my
mom.
god, that is so funny.
And I I don't know why, but people tell me all the time, like, "Oh, you look just like your mom."
I
Like,
hear it
family
too.
members will say it, "Oh, you look just like your mom." And to me, like, I personally don't really, like, see it, but everybody says it, so obviously it's true.
I agree. I feel
And
the same exact way.
yeah, and I'm like, "Okay." But yeah, it doesn't bother me. I mean, I don't hate my mom,
No,
so,
no.
it's not something where I'm like, "How dare you say that to me?"
Well, when I hear my mom, some people say I sound like her, and when we have her on the podcast later in the year, everyone will be able to see if we do sound alike or
Actually
not.
sound alike.
But everyone says we sound identical, and when we're sitting next to each other, it's like two Marys, and they go on, and I'm just like, then I hear her talk, and I'm like, I sound like that. Oh my god, you guys, and that's what I mean by
Oh,
it. Like
that's so funny.
they say, I sound
I'll
just
have to
like her.
yeah, I've never heard her
Talk. Yeah,
voice,
it's definitely a
so
family thing that everyone knows about. And when we go to meetings too, when we go to meetings, then everyone's like, "Oh my god, you guys are identical. Oh my god, you even sound the same. Oh my god, your humor's the same." And it's like, "Your laugh is the same." I'm like, "Okay, I'm not my mom, guys. I'm not my
that's
mom."
so funny. Yeah, Reed doesn't think I look like my mom, so
I would go with
I
Reed
don't
then.
know.
I mean, he
I'll have
looked
to send you a picture.
you'll have to. You'll have I look just like
Yeah,
my mom. I know I do. I look just like her.
I mean,
I
you
mean, she's
do.
beautiful, so I'm not mad
Yeah,
about it or anything, but she's gorgeous. But I look just like
yeah,
her. I'm a different nose, got my little
yeah,
button
different
nose.
nose.
My little button nose. Anyway,
So, what are some like, is there something you can think of that your parents did right or one of your parents did right that you feel like you would be okay modeling, that you would be okay continuing in your own parenting, that you feel good about like doing
yeah.
in your own life?
Well, my
Do you
dad
have anything?
I do. My dad, he was only with in the house till I was 9, but he was very affectionate and he said I love you a lot, like throughout the day for no good reason. And so me and my husband definitely do that. We say I love you to our kids and to each other all the time, and I love it. Um, he was, yeah, affectionate. I'm not as much affectionate, but when my kids show me affection, I try to be affectionate as he would because he was a very affectionate or is a very affectionate person. Um, you know, I would say my mom with the building up my self-esteem and telling us how great we are and working hard. She's a very strong ethic.
Work ethic.
Thank you, that one.
You're welcome.
Um, she has a very strong one. She's worked my entire childhood, sometimes 2, 3 jobs at a time to make sure me and my brothers had what we needed. So I would say that. My stepdad, Rick, I would say he did a lot of like cooking for us and just trying different foods. He was a chef or is a chef. I don't even know how to. He's still here, so I don't even know if he cooks anymore or not. But he was like a chef in a restaurant when he was with my mom, and so
Okay.
we made escargot for us, fish, like all different types of stuff. Just artichokes, like all those things
Yeah.
that my mom would never even buy or go to the aisle to
Yeah.
get. So I try to do that with my kids all the time.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I would say my mom, and I've mentioned this before, she would never talk shit about my other parents. And so I've always tried to take that into my parenting because I think that's super
It
important to
is.
never like say negative things about the other parents, like no matter who the other parent is or what they've done to you or to your children or whatever. I just really feel like that's important. I think truths are okay
Yeah.
if you're saying them in a like a
Constructive.
positive,
Yeah.
constructive way. I don't think you need to go into details. If kids ask questions, absolutely answer them.
Yeah.
But, if the significant other cheated on you, is that the kid's business? I mean, not really,
No.
stuff like that. But my mom never did that kind of stuff. And to me, I feel like that speaks a lot about her integrity when it came to us
Yes.
because my other parents were not that way. They said a lot of shit and that impacted us greatly growing
Yeah.
up and it was really hard for us to deal with. Um my dad always used to make an effort when I was younger. Doesn't do it now, but he did when we were younger.
Yeah.
He would always try to do things with me at least and whenever he had the time like he would take me to remodeling jobs and like teach me stuff
That's
and
cool.
I always yeah, I always felt like special, like he always would do things with me that made me feel special and like say like I love you and I care
Yeah.
about you and stuff like that. And that, he did try and make me feel special when I was younger. So,
Yeah.
I think he was good about that kind of stuff. And I do try to do those types of things with Ramona. And then my stepmom, I will say, she was very good, like you were saying, about making sure we always had things that we needed. Like we never went without anything. We always had food, we always had clothes, we always had school supplies, whatever kind of stuff that we needed. She was
Yeah.
always on top of that kind of stuff. The house was always in good order. So I guess that was good.
Yeah.
And then my stepdad, that I grew up with, him and my mom were married for, I know, 15 years, I think. I knew him for actually longer than that. I think they separated when I was 19. So they were married for
A
19
long
years
time.
maybe.
Yeah.
They were a long time, yeah. He was always there to like keep the peace when my mom was pissed off
Oh, I
and
love
he
that.
like would make you feel better about a situation, kind of keep you distracted from being upset and he was always just funny and easy to get along with and just
Yeah.
kind of like made you feel like everything was going to be okay, kind of positive spin sort of a guy and just always felt like if I was upset, I could, talk to him in a way where he would just sort of kind of get you out of the funk.
Yeah.
And,
I like that.
when I would visit my mom, I always felt uncomfortable being there because I didn't know her very well, but he never made me feel like I was out of place being there. Where my mom kind of did make me feel that way, like he never made me
I
feel
like
that way
that.
in the summers. And
Yeah.
so he was always awesome that way.
That's good. I'm leaving
Yeah.
I'm leaving people out. First, I you remind me, one thing my stepdad Rick did, when he would bring my mom roses, like he'd bring her red roses when he would come home from the
Yeah.
platform because he worked in the ocean. Um, he would always bring me yellow roses. So I would always get
Oh,
roses
that's
too.
nice.
Yeah, and so I have a tattoo. I'm gonna get it colored yellow for him because that's something that I remember still to this day, feeling very special when he would bring those home to me
Yeah.
too, and not the boys, just me and my mom got something. Um, and then I have to say, my mom had quite a few boyfriends, so I don't know why I'm leaving them out. Um, I would say John, my mom's boyfriend, John, he was I only there briefly for a few years. And he, but he contributed a lot to my life. He taught me a lot of street smarts and how to like handle myself, I guess you would say. He gave me the chutzpah, he gave me that like, he gave me the balls, really.
Chutzpah.
Like he told me, like, you can say that, you can do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how he was as a quote unquote stepdad. And then my mom's boyfriend, Dave, may he rest in peace. He was murdered a few years ago. Um, was such a good guy. He was never my stepdad. He never wanted to be that. He was always just my mom's boyfriend. He's a mechanic, and what he did was he taught me how to change tire, how to change all that kind of stuff, and he really
No
taught.
wonder you know more about cars than Junior.
Oh, yeah, my husband's never oh my god, don't get me started on that, man. Um,
That'll be a whole episode
whole
on its own.
episode. Fuck. No, he taught me so much about how to listen to my car, and he also taught me a lot about, like, he had random facts. Like, he was one of those random fact people. Like, he would just spurt off random facts all day, and he had a stutter. And I have like a personality disorder, and I pick up on people's bad habits, like especially in speech or their accents. Like, I pick it up. And he has a stutter. So whenever I'd get around him, I'd start to stutter, and we would be laughing and stuff because he's like, "Why are you copying me?" And I'm like, "I'm not copying you, dude. Like, this just naturally happens. Like, I can't
Oh my
help it. You
gosh.
know, I copy, you know what I mean, what I hear." So I don't know. I think they all contributed to my life, and they brought something that does help my parenting style. And you know what I mean? I try to
Yeah.
teach my kids about cars. I try to make sure they understand that they break and that they're not forever like my husband thinks. Yeah. So I think each person had like a big contribution
Isn't
to
that
my life.
interesting how, you have your parents and they are the ones who are impactful, or, whoever raises you, because not everyone is raised by their parents. And those, you kind of have it like in your head that the people who are raising you are the ones where you're going to have like your parenting style from, but there's so
Mhm.
many people that kind of impact the way
Yeah.
you're parenting and how you're choosing to parent and stuff like that. There's so many different, outside influences, and you kind of take a little bit here and a little bit there, and no,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that because I see how this is working out, or, I notice that these people are parenting this way and that's kind of weird and I'm choosing not to do it that way. It's just so many different things. And
I think
I
it's
guess,
cool.
it's kind of interesting, and I think seeing all of the different
Yeah.
influences and stuff is really interesting, but
You
I
opened
think
my
the
eyes. You
biggest
opened my eyes because honestly, I was just thinking of those 3 people, and then I was like, "Wait." When she asks me, like, who has impacted my parenting style, yeah, like, those people too, you know what I and those
yeah.
were positive people, you know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
yeah, pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
I think there's probably more, if you
Yeah,
think about
well,
it
I'm
really
saying,
hard.
yeah, after I listen to this, I'm sure I'll come up after we're done, I'm sure I'll come up with, like, 10 more people, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
that have
definitely.
definitely influenced me in a negative or a positive way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
I think the thing that I mostly want people to take away from this is, you know, there's a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, there are people out there that don't wanna be like their parents, or they don't wanna parent like their parents, and that's okay.
yeah,
You don't have to parent the same way your parents did. You don't have to parent anything like your parents did. You don't have to let them influence the way that you're parenting. And you can break those, toxic, dysfunctional types of parenting. And you can choose to parent in different ways. You can choose to talk to your kids in different ways. You can choose to be just different. And, if you need help setting boundaries, like we always say, or,
yeah,
going to therapy and learning different coping mechanisms or techniques or whatever, there's parenting classes as well, and things like that. And, talking to people too and finding out what works for them. Not every parenting style works for everybody, but finding out what works for other people sometimes is helpful. I think talking to other parents,
yeah, starting
you
the
find out a lot of
conversation.
information. Yeah. And, it's not always going to work for everybody, but it can. So
Sometimes
I think
feeling
it's
like
good.
you can relate with other parents and feeling less alone in the bullshit that is
Helps.
parenting helps so much. So,
Yes.
if you're holding it in, like, I share openly. If somebody asks me something, I am pretty open. I'll share because I feel like then it's going to open that door for everybody else to come through and say, "Me too. Me too." You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
I I think talking too about things that you went through when you were younger, or that you don't wanna do because your parents did it and it was traumatizing for you, or you just didn't like the way that your parents did it. I think that helps bring awareness to your mind and how maybe you don't wanna parent or do
Yeah.
wanna parent or whatever too, because I think some people don't realize that they're parenting in the same way, and it's not an ideal parenting style, or it's not an ideal parenting way,
Yeah.
and they don't even realize that it's maybe negative or detrimental. Maybe they don't realize they're talking to their kids negatively, or maybe they don't realize that they're being an oversharer, or maybe they
Yeah.
don't realize that they're not being affectionate enough or something like that. And sometimes I think sitting down and being like, hey, how was I raised? Were my parents this way with me, or were they this way with me? Did I like that they did this, or did I not like that they did this? And
Yeah.
just sitting down and like having that thought and just being like, hey, the way that I'm doing this is the exact way that I've always said, like, I don't want to parent my kids this way,
Yeah.
or I do want to parent them this way. And I think just doing that is probably a good idea
And
sometimes.
also like we did, like writing down the good qualities of our parents and the things we want to carry on, and the things that were good influences on us too, because
Yeah.
then it reminds you what you want to do going forward, and then you can always go back to that list if you find yourself going back to your old behavior and be like, or back to this episode and re-listen to it and be like, well, oh yeah, gotta do that again. I gotta call myself up, I gotta write this stuff down, I gotta, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and remember too, there are some things that maybe if you didn't really have a good relationship with your parents, like, there's some redeeming qualities in people
Yes.
somewhere
And me and you
too.
found some in ours, and that
I did, and it took me a minute on
I
one of them,
know,
and I
me
was like, "Oh,
too.
I
Me
got one."
too. Me too. And you saw my face when you asked me too about who else is
I
put in
know.
on my parenting and style. And I'm like, I don't even think I have anybody, because I wasn't
Yeah,
around
but
my
you did.
grandma or anything. But you're right. I have so many. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I love it. I love this episode. It
good.
turned out really good.
Same.
All
All
right.
right, you guys, think about it. Have a conversation with yourself or your partner,
Yeah.
because they influence you too. You guys influence each other. Your ex partner also, you guys influence each other. You don't have to have a conversation with them though, because that might be weird. Maybe it won't. Maybe you're good co-parenters. Who knows? What do I know? You guys, talk to yourselves. Write it down. Whatever you
Evaluate.
need to do. Talk to us.
Yeah.
Asia will do her poll like she always does.
Yep. It'll be
Hit
up
us up
there.
in the DMs. Yeah. Uh Rate, review, subscribe, find us on social media, all that
Follow
kind of shit.
us.
Yeah, do it.
Do it.
Do it. What else?
I think
Nothing. I got nothing.
I'm tired, man. This is the third episode. We're
Yeah,
we're
bye.
we're the
Just
best.
kidding.
We're the best at this.
Everybody is done being in their rooms all day.
Our family can now move about the cabin. Oh my god,
I
so
just
funny.
realized, like, I'm probably gonna upload these videos somewhere, and I'm over here, like, rubbing my nose and, like, scratching my
Well,
face.
I'm
I think
bright red.
I had my, like, face stone earlier, and I was,
You
like,
were.
rubbing my face, and I'm like, "Oh, shit, we're gonna be fucking idiot."
Look at
You
me.
guys,
Look at me. We're gonna upload these. I'm bright red, and
very red.
I've been drinking Shasta the whole time. So
I hope I wasn't picking my nose.
anyway, guys. Have a
Bye.
good
Have a
week.
great day.
Yeah. Have a good one, guys.